We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
They're going to catch me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, doctor, help me.
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're going to make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first.
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
Welcome to the American International Podcast. I'm Jeff Markin.
And I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And on this episode, we are taking a look at Diary of a Bachelor from 1964.
Diary of a Bachelor was directed by Sandy Howard and written by Ken Barnett, which is a pseudonym of Freddie Francis. It was produced by Sandy Howard for Homer Productions and released by American International Pictures.
Diary of a Bachelor stars William Traylor as Skip O'Hara, the Bachelor, Joe Silver as Charlie Barrett, Dagne Crane as Joanna, Denise Lohr as Jane Woods, Jan Crockett as Jennifer Waters, Susan Dean as Barbara, Eleni Kiamos as Angie Pisano, Arlene Golonka as Lois,
Joan Holloway as Nancy Feather, Mickey Deems as Barney Washburn, Paula Stewart as Carlotta Jones, DeLuise as Marvin Rollins, Jackie Kannon as Bob Haney, Lorna Thatcher as Mrs. O'Hara, and Beatrice Pons as Thelma.
This is a black and white film, and it opens with a jazzy score and shots of men being distracted by something.
What could it be? They're on the streets of New York City, going about their business when something catches their eye.
They're interrupted from making phone calls. They're bumping into poles.
They're coming up from manholes.
They're peeking around poles.
Whatever they're looking at is stopping traffic.
And what they're looking at is a woman with really good posture walking down the street.
Well, in true sexist movie style, we start with her butt and work our way out from there. It's a really nice butt. I'll admit that.
I thought it was dirty.
Thought it was dirty. Like
there's like a spot of dirt on the left derriere.
Okay, Mr. OCD.
I was like, yeah, well, that was an interesting choice. Gross, but
it might have just been a shadow.
The woman walks past a man who we find out is our hero, the Bachelor, when his picture moves into the corner of the screen and the title of the movie comes up and another title introducing William Traylor as the Bachelor.
We should mention that he also very obviously gawked at this woman.
Well, he did a double take just like everybody else did.
Right. Over the credits, we see a bunch of women going about their daily business, whether it's ironing, doing yoga, or taking a bath. And each and every one of them has a 8x10 glossy of William Traylor, or our Bachelor, that they stare at while they do their stuff.
The woman who's bathing splashes some bubbles at it, and thus ends our credit sequence.
It's fun.
So the movie proper opens when Miss Joanna Burns drives up to an apartment building, and she leaves her car with, I guess, the valet. He seems to be the doorman, but maybe he has two jobs.
Maybe he just calls the valet.
And then we go inside this building, and we see Skip is entertaining two women. Their names are Susan and Carol.
In his swanky mid-century apartment.
And they're commenting how amazed they are that someone has gotten Skip to settle down.
The younger of the two women says it's kind of a shame. Like she's not sure that's the right choice for him. This is the moment when Joanna makes her appearance. She comes into the apartment. She doesn't look too happy to see him entertaining two attractive women.
So it turns out Joanna is the woman that Skip is engaged to.
Skip says that these are just two old friends of his. She looks a little skeptical, though. But they're on their way, and Skip and Joanna are alone.
Joanna says that his story would be a little more believable if he'd wiped the lipstick from his face.
Just a little hint of what's to come in this movie, I think. Barbara and Skip are about to go out, but before that can happen, the phone rings, and Skip takes the call.
It appears to be someone called Mike.
His business partner.
And Skip is a realtor, and there's an emergency business meeting that must take place right now.
Yes. Skip says he'll be gone about an hour, and Joanna can either wait for him there or go on to the restaurant without him. She opts to stay.
She goes into the bedroom to make a phone call. She's calling the couple that she is supposed to be meeting later, Sid and Helen, and tells Helen that they should go on without them, and Joanna and Skip will have to catch up with them later.
For some reason, Joanna needs to write down a number, perhaps the number of the restaurant. She rifles around in Skip's nightstand, finds a pad of paper and a pen, takes down the number, and when she goes to return the pad, she finds a leather-bound book.
The Diary of a Bachelor.
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say anything. So she's curious and opens it up. Gets a brief taste of the contents. There's an entry marked April 7th, and Skip helpfully voices the first page of this diary because it's really hard to read.
For some time, I have considered recording my experiences as a bachelor. She immediately closes the book, but almost as quickly overcome by her curiosity and opens it up again. And as she reads, we get to hear Skip's voiceover telling us what the words say, except that they don't match.
The text of the diary says that he is recording his experiences here to enjoy later when he is a lonely and frustrated old man. I'm paraphrasing. Now that she's fully committed to reading the book, the movie dissolves to a flashback. Skip is still narrating. He says he does want to get married someday, and he wonders which witch will lock him down. And we go back to Joanna, where she gasps at this little entry.
The first entry is devoted to Barbara. Via this flashback, we are introduced to the character of Charlie Barrett, a fellow bachelor, and he has invited Skip to a cocktail party that he's holding.
Skip's at the bar talking to Charlie when a beautiful woman walks in. She seems to be on the arm of a rich older man, and Skip is agog.
Yeah, Skip can't take his eyes off her, and he forgot that he had actually come with somebody else, Jennifer Waters.
She can't take her eyes off him. She sees her man drooling over another woman. She goes up to him and says she's ready to leave now. She has an upset stomach.
So Skip spends the next week looking for this Barbara. He stops women in the street, which he says is embarrassing when he's wrong, and he's been wrong every time. He never finds her.
He's spending nearly every waking moment looking for her. However, he is still dating in the interim.
So later we find ourselves at a bar, and Skip is there with a female friend. And in the background, we see Barbara come in. Skip hasn't noticed her yet.
After Skip settles the tab, he turns around and sees Barbara there.
His friend knows Barbara, and she goes to introduce them. And Skip tells Barbara that they've already met, but not formally. And she thinks for a moment and remembers the party and that they had flirted across the room with their eyes.
Skip's friend notices the obvious chemistry between the two and leaves them alone so they can get to know each other better.
So Skip and Barbara take a table and begin to talk. But Skip says he needs to make a phone call and excuses himself.
On his way to the phone, he gets waylaid by a woman who we find out is named Angie Pisano. She knows him by reputation only, but she's really happy to meet him. Really happy. Judging by her conversation with the bartender/waiter that she's playing chess with, Angie is a working girl.
And she knows Skip as a friend of a friend. And she asks about the woman he's sitting with and notes that she's very beautiful.
If only she was that beautiful, she'd be a millionaire. Skip does finally get to the phone and asks the operator to call Jennifer, the woman from the cocktail party, to make an excuse for why he can't pick her up that night. He's in the hospital with a slipped disc. What a jerk.
And he says to tell her that he'll be calling once he gets down to the hospital. So Skip and Barbara spend the evening together.
It's an enchanted evening with romantic strolls, kisses by the fountain, the whole 9 yards.
And during this, Skip's voiceover talks of finally finding the woman he's been looking for.
Of course, they end up in bed together, and Skip looks absolutely smitten by Barbara. And he goes on about the miracle of two people discovering each other.
But he's interrupted by the phone.
There's so much for the afterglow.
She asked him to get the phone for her, and he grabs it and hands it to her, and she takes the call. It's Paul.
She tries to beg off. Paul obviously wants to see her for whatever purpose. She's not interested. It's very late. It's 4:30 in the morning, going on 5. But Paul makes her an offer she can't refuse.
And she says under the circumstances, she'll be there before the ice cubes melt. She gets out of bed and starts to dress.
It suddenly dawns on Skip that Barbara is also a working girl, just maybe a higher class one.
So Skip is having a conversation with her as she's getting dressed in the other room. And she says she's been in the business for about 4 years, and it's a terrible way to make a living. And Skip is disappointed, disgusted, and embarrassed.
He was looking to settle down, and now he has to settle up.
The phone rings again. This time it's Frank. And Barbara makes another appointment for later in the morning and tells Skip not to bother answering the phone because the answering service can get it from this point.
She says, "Goodbye, Skip." I was expecting him to leave, but he doesn't quite get the hint. So she leaves.
So back in the present, Joanna throws down the book in disgust and stomps it on the apartment. Then she comes back in, settles down with the book to read some more.
The next entry is dated May 19th. This entry is all about Nancy Feather, half Indian, half wild woman.
From Las Vegas. She's in the shower, and Skip comes in to deliver an O'Hara special. It's a drink.
Yeah, it looks like ice water. They're having a wild, passionate weekend together. As she showers, they banter a little bit about marriage. She's not the marrying kind, she says. More on that later.
In this whole sequence, Skip is running around in a bathrobe, and I had flashbacks to John Astin as Ad O'Hare in Bunny O'Hare, and I was wondering if there was any relation, but O'Hare and O'Hara, while similar, are different names. So probably not.
That's quite the callback, Jeff.
The phone rings and Skip answers. It's Jennifer Waters. She asks him about his slip disc, and he doesn't remember.
Not at first.
He doesn't remember telling her about that. But then it dawns on him. He says, oh, yeah, it's better.
So they haven't seen each other, obviously, since then. Then Jennifer drops a bomb. She's pregnant and has been for about 3 months.
Skip is devastated. This could seriously hamper his bachelor way of life.
Certainly could. Also, Jennifer wants to come over. Now. So Skip has to tell Nancy to get dressed and go make herself unavailable and disappear for a couple hours.
Skedaddle.
Nancy teases him, says, what's her name? But she does agree to get out of the way, and she goes to get dressed. Skip has a smoke to calm himself down, and then he makes a phone call to Phil, an old friend of his, to ask the name of the doctor who solved Phil's embarrassing problem with his secretary last year. Phil says that doctor's not available because he was sentenced to jail for 2 years. Bad luck for Skip.
Now that Nancy's dressed, she's ready to leave. Skip convinces her to go window shopping, and she says she will look for something expensive for him to buy her later.
It's the least he can do.
So she takes her leave. She kind of has a dramatic exit with a little wiggle and a kick.
Very silly. Once she's gone, Skip starts pacing around again, and then the doorbell rings.
Skip is prepared for the worst because he's expecting Jennifer Waters to come.
But it's not who you think. It's his mother. Mrs. O'Hara, Irish accent intact, comes in with a bag containing Skip's split pea soup.
And also to nag him about never finding a nice girl settling down and giving her grandchildren.
And for dating Eloise, which was Mom's recommendation for a good woman to date. After the one time that they dated, he never called her back. That's personally very embarrassing for Mrs. O'Hara. And she wants him to at least call Eloise. As she nags him, she's walking around tidying up. He was going to get dressed and had his shirt out. She puts it away. Skip gets it back out. She never stops talking the whole time, but she can't stay long because Mr. O'Hara is downstairs double parked.
So as Skip is pushing her out the door, Charlie Barrett arrives. He had been invited for lunch with Skip and Nancy, and he's delighted to have been able to see Mrs. O'Hara before she leaves.
He's so charming. He talks to her in a little Irish lilt, and obviously Mrs. O'Hara loves Charlie, but she leaves anyways.
So Skip tells Charlie about his situation, and Charlie congratulates him on his impending fatherhood.
Skip does not feel like congratulations are in order. He's very upset. Charlie takes this very seriously, though. He talks to Skip saying that no marriage is perfect, and there are worse things than marrying Jennifer. And Skip asks what? And he says, not marrying her. And Charlie reminds Skip that if he's scared, just imagine how Jennifer feels. Charlie is awesome from the get-go.
This guilt trip seems to do the trick, and Skip asks Charlie to be his best man.
Charlie's happy that his little talk worked, and he leaves to get a suit for the wedding.
It's not too much longer that Jennifer arrives, and she's brought along Harley Peterson. He's her oldest and dearest friend from back home in Texas.
Skip's surprised that she brought him. Harley says that he came right up when he heard about Jennifer's embarrassing situation, and he's there to protect her interests. Skip asks Jennifer who knows that she's pregnant. Jennifer says that only her doctor and some of her family members know. She didn't want to make a public announcement until after we were married. That's her words, not mine.
Skip is still feeling trapped and assuming that he's the groom-to-be. So he asks Harley why he's there. And Harley says, because I'm going to be marrying her.
This is very strange. Harley doesn't think he's the father of Jennifer's baby, but Jennifer has convinced Harley that she and Skip never slept together, that they had a platonic brother-sister type relationship.
Yeah, Skip almost spoils this with his questioning, and Jennifer is giving him all manner of dirty looks while he's speaking.
But she didn't clue him in on what he was supposed to say ahead of time, which she very well could have done with that phone call.
Or could have just said, I'd like you to meet my fiance.
Exactly.
Instead of saying, I'm pregnant, I need to see you.
She might have been trying to mess with his head a little bit then. That's about the only thing that makes sense. Harley does get the impression that maybe it wasn't quite platonic, but Jennifer says it was really nothing. She was lonely, and Skip just filled in a gap in her life because Harley wasn't there.
Skip tells Jennifer to shut up, to which Harley takes offense and punches Skip so hard he flies over the couch.
Harley and Jennifer take their leave. Skip comes back up from behind the couch. He may be injured, but Skip is relieved because he thought he was the cause of Jennifer's trouble, but now he's not so sure, or he thinks maybe he's not. He calls Charlie to say that he's the happiest man in the world now.
He has a new lease on life.
Back with Joanna, she's shocked. She huffs and says, the indifference.
Once again, she closes the book in disgust. She goes to the kitchen and pours herself a shot, and then returns to reading.
It's June 2nd. Skip had a date with Annabelle, but he canceled in order to attend the regular, like clockwork, every Tuesday night poker game. That leads me to wonder, why did he make a date in the first place?
This poker game is scheduled with regularity at Charlie's real estate office in the conference room. This particular week, there are 5 players in attendance. There's Charlie, the host, Barney Washburn, who is the big winner the night his 4th daughter was born, Bob Haney, who survived 5 wives and 6 psychiatrists, and newcomer Marvin Rollins, played by DeLuise, a newbie to the group who was engaged to be married after being with the same girl for 7 years.
And of course, Skip is there, and he's a little shocked that a man would stay with a woman for 7 years. It's not his way.
This is a typical man's poker game. Cards are dealt, cigars are smoked, except for Marvin, who's smoking a pipe. And the conversation is largely about women.
And it's not nice. They're denigrating the concept of marriage, women in general. Barney claims that women were put on this earth to just punish men for their sins.
One says that every woman is an angel until after the honeymoon, and then the fun begins, if you enjoy pain.
Barney and Bob agree that all women are the same, and they're all miserable.
And Bob says after 5 wives, he's come to the one conclusion, bachelors are the only real experts on marriage.
They also agree that Skip is an escape artist, having never gotten married despite all his skirt chasing. They mention a news item where a woman in New Jersey blew the head off her husband. Bob says you never know what to expect from these women.
And this is when the cleaning woman, Thelma, comes in. She asks Charlie Barrett if it's okay to clean around them, and he says sure, and she gets to work. Bob is hungry, so the game temporarily breaks up, and sandwiches are distributed.
Yay, sandwiches.
And the anti-woman conversation continues, but now Thelma's in the room listening.
Barney has another anecdote. It's about an unfaithful wife. He knew a man who looked like Cary Grant, and his wife cheated on him anyways. Skip is optimistic. That's just one instance. But Bob and Barney want to argue against women in general.
So Bob comes up with this hypothetical situation, taking an average woman, in this case, let's say Barney's wife.
Ooh, he makes it personal.
So Barney has been playing poker every Tuesday night for the past 6 years or so. Does he know what his wife has been doing every Tuesday night while he's out playing poker?
Barney says, oh, okay, you're trying to tell me that my wife's cheating on me, right? And no amount of anyone saying this is just a hypothetical will convince him. He's on his way home to find out what his wife is up to.
So everybody's arguing, but Charlie still just wants to play poker.
But once Barney leaves, Bob leaves, and Marvin leaves, he also wants to check on his hopefully faithful fiancée. He's got some questions for her.
Skip is still there, and he asks Charlie if he could use the phone to call Annabelle.
He's going to get his date back on.
He tells her the meeting is over, and they can get together now.
That leaves Charlie and Thelma alone. So Thelma sits down and plays cards. She's got a nice hand. She lays it down and says, "Gin." And Charlie looks disgusted. This moment actually makes her laugh. How it got in the diary after Skip left is anyone's guess.
And the phone rings.
Joanne takes the call. She says that no, the funny bunny isn't here.
So we know who's on the other end of the phone line because the only one who calls Skip Funny Bunny is Nancy Feather.
Joanna says that she's the maid and she'll take a message for Skip from the caller. And we can tell that she's very angry.
Yeah, she tells Nancy that she will be sure to give him the message. And then she continues to read.
The next diary entry came yesterday. Skip has proposed to Joanna. Wow, that came out of nowhere.
And she's accepted.
Yay. Congratulations. Mazel tov.
He finally found the one who could get him to settle for one witch.
Oh, that makes her really angry too. And why did he come to the conclusion that he needed to get married?
There are 7 reasons why he decided it was time to settle down.
And we're going to hear about every single one of them.
The first reason is Carlotta Jones.
Day 1.
It's Friday evening, and he's finally landed a date with Carlotta Jones. They're going away for the weekend. He's got the key to his friend's summer home, and they'll be spending some time together.
However, what Skip imagines the weekend's going to be like and what Carlotta is planning to do that weekend are very different things. Carlotta is a fitness junkie. She's planning to take advantage of the fresh air and the nearby river. The first night, she's too tired to do anything, so she begs off and goes to sleep alone.
She says she wants to get a good night's rest for the next day's activities. So Saturday morning, she knocks on Skip's door at 6:17 a.m.
Ready for some activity.
And she wants to go swimming.
Do you know how cold the water is at 6:17 a.m., Jeff?
It depends on where you are. But they're in New York. I imagine it's pretty cold.
Well, it is June, but yeah, you're right. Obviously, Skip wants some nookie, but Joanna just wants to work out and do healthy stuff. Next stop is the golf course.
At 8 a.m., they tee off. Carlotta drives first, and she sends her ball sailing nicely into the air. When Skip's up, he whiffs it.
Next, they're going for one of 2 rides. First is on a Honda scooter.
It's not a big motorcycle. It's a groovy little motorbike. And what we see is all the neighborhood children following them as they ride down the street.
They're not going that fast. Once that ride is concluded, it's time to go horseback riding. I don't think Skip's a big fan of that.
He describes the rest of the afternoon as being subjected to pains beyond human endurance.
Carlotta's enjoying it, though. Then we see them having dinner at the house. Carlotta has obviously taken a shower after the day's exertions. Her hair's up in rollers. She's got a scarf over it. Looks very much like a housefrau.
And she starts commenting and criticizing Skip's diet.
It's not healthy, that's for sure. Unlike Carlotta, who drinks milk, does not drink alcohol, and eats really good, healthy food like potatoes.
Skip admits to her that so far they haven't really had a whole lot in common, but he thinks there's an activity that they could participate in together that evening. But she says that he needs to get a good night's rest after his exertions of the day.
Skip's obviously not going to get what he wants out of the weekend. Skip asks Carlotta if they couldn't just go back to the city early. Carlotta pouts at this. She's having a great time. So Skip says that, well, she can stay and enjoy the rest of the weekend on her own. And Carlotta's fine with this.
He did just remember that he has an important business meeting.
Of course, there's always important business meetings whenever something unpleasant happens.
But she's excited because she wanted to go fishing the next day.
Skip goes back to town, leaving Carla up in the country without a car. Maybe she'll rent a horse and get home that way. This brings us to day 3.
It's Sunday, a perfect day to relax.
Skip's in the park with a woman. They're laying down on the grass. He leans in to cover her body with his and give her a kiss. For his efforts, he gets a slap, and that's the end of that.
Then we're treated to a montage of cars and people and jazzy music.
This is kind of fun. I don't mind this part of the movie at all.
Later that same day, Skip has secured a date with Wanda Smith.
Bad news, though. Her babysitter showed up drunk, so Wanda has to bring her 6-year-old son along on the date with them.
A devout sadist.
He kind of is.
Wanda is a $60 an hour cover model who goes to her psychiatrist every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Her son goes on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
The entire psychiatrist bill is 1/4 of her total income. Somehow Skip knows this for this woman he apparently just met.
So they're dragging this kid, literally kicking and screaming, to the car. As they drive off, the kid is standing in the back seat and he slams Skip over the head with a wiffle ball bat.
Hopefully it's a wiffle ball bat. Yeah, he's standing up in the back of a convertible on the highway, unbelted, unrestrained in any way. Gotta love the 60s.
Skip suggests that Wanda may want to discipline her child.
He takes the bat away from the kid, and Wanda gives the bat right back. Apparently her psychiatrist advised that the kid have free reign and get to do whatever he wants.
So Skip decides if you can't beat them, join them, and they're going to spend the day at an amusement park.
Seems to start off pretty well. Skip and the little boy are riding a roller coaster. But once Wanda needs to go to the ladies' room and leaves Skip alone with the boy, things go south fast.
Skip gets a kick to the shin, and as he grabs the child, Wanda returns, and she demands that Skip take them both home right now.
She calls him a beast. We only see her lips moving, but I could read lips. On the way back, Wanda and the little boy sit in the back seat, and Skip's up front, all alone.
And the voiceover tells us that Sunday night, Skip went to the movies. Alone.
Wah wah. Now we're on day 4, Monday. Skip is making a comeback. He's got a date with Victoria Impulski, the secretary to the Polish delegation at the United Nations.
This was a blind date, and he decides to take her to a more classy joint than he usually would, and they go to a place with belly dancing.
Ooh. Skip is entranced at the sight of this lovely woman doing her belly dancing act. Her name is Taya. He's making eyes at her. She's making eyes right back. Skip fails to notice that Victoria is making eyes at him, and they're not happy eyes. She's angry. She keeps looking over at Skip, who's ignoring her entirely.
So rather than cause an international incident, Victoria leaves.
Skip barely notices until a few minutes later. He says that the evening wasn't a total washout. He asked Taya to meet him later, and she agreed.
So Taya and Skip have a lovely dinner together along with Taya's husband.
Wah, wah. Tuesday, day 5.
Skip has a date with Pat Simmons. He gets a call from her, and she breaks the date because she said that her grandmother is in town.
However, Skip finds out later from friends that Pat was out with a grandma who was 6'3" and who shaves.
And again, Skip spends the night at the movies alone.
He's not doing too good. Skip considers making some calls, but his ego won't let him get rejected twice in one night. So he heads off to the Cafe Bagatelle. Just as before, Angie Pisano is at the bar, and she's playing chess with the bartender again.
Cafe Bagatelle is the restaurant/bar in a previous diary entry.
Skip sits down at a table alone, but Angie spots him.
She recognizes him and offers to buy him a drink. So he comes over to her, and they do some shots, and she has a milk chaser.
She has an ulcer. Skip tries to compliment her, but she's not having it.
She asks him if he thinks she's pretty.
He's diplomatic about it. Angie's feeling down because she just had a date with a guy who took one look at her and left right away.
He excused himself to make a phone call and never came back.
The classic story. So she's feeling down and she has another drink with another milk chaser. Skip invites her up to his place for some ham and eggs, if you know what I mean.
And she says that she can't. She has a business meeting, but that she hopes that he asks her again because she'd really like to.
I bet she would. She goes to pay her tab and Skip insists on paying it himself. Skip wants to make up for the bad night she's had. So Angie leaves and Skip goes to settle up. Her tab is $47.50.
He says, "How much milk did she drink?" And the bartender replies, "Didn't she tell you? She's got an ulcer."
That's kind of funny. It's now Thursday. Who is the girl du jour, Jeff?
He's spending the day with Cynthia Brooks, an old friend and companion.
And they're at the horse races.
Cynthia gets a vicarious thrill out of spending someone else's money.
So Skip provides the funds for her betting, and she doesn't bet well. Skip loses $378.
And it's after losing this money that she tells Skip that she's engaged to a jet pilot and that she's sure that he would love him.
Skip is wondering why didn't she mention that earlier, for obvious reasons. Later, Skip is kvetching to Charlie about his 6-day unlucky streak.
Charlie tells him that even Mickey Mantle has a bad day, which Skip replies, "Yeah, but not 6 in a row."
Charlie reminds Skip that he may have had a bad week, but Charlie's having a bad life. Even when he played Spin the Bottle, the girls would only kiss him on the cheek. Skip seems to get what he's saying there. Charlie offers to take him to the village, and Skip says that he's glad he gets to spend the day with his friend.
So they're walking down the street and they come across an avant-garde gallery. So they go in for a look-see. So while checking out a painting, a woman comes up to them and asks their opinions on what they're looking at.
They very diplomatically say it's interesting.
And she asks if they would like to buy it.
So now they know they're talking to the artist. She introduces herself as Lois. She flirts with both of them. Soon we can tell that it's Skip that she's really interested in.
So Charlie excuses himself to check on a painting across the room and to give Skip and Lois some time alone.
Good wingman. Lois drags Skip over to see her painting. It's called Solitude. It's an abstract. And she asks Skip, "Are you single or are you a bachelor?"
He's not sure he knows what the difference is.
Lois tells him the difference is, with a single man, you have a chance. With a bachelor, never.
So she looks at him and decides that he's a bachelor because he has an evil look about him.
Still, she wants to go off with him.
She asks Skip if he'd like to buy lunch for a poor, starving artist. And I guess he thinks this is a good idea. So he goes to Charlie to tell him they're all going out to lunch.
Charlie pretends that he has a date, Skip doesn't really get it at first, but then he realizes that Charlie's being really nice here to let them be alone together.
So Charlie and Lois spend the entire day together.
They go off for a New York City travelogue montage set to music.
It's after midnight, and Lois has invited Skip to her apartment to see her etchings.
Classic. Up until now, Skip has been quite taken with Lois. She's different from the girls he normally chases after, and he's having a good time with her.
She lives in a small studio apartment.
Very messy one.
She pays $54.40 a month for rent.
And the toilet is in the living room.
And she has a cat chained to her toilet.
It wasn't chained.
Yes, it was.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Ew.
It might just be to keep it there for shooting, but it was chained to the toilet.
Well, it was by an open window, so maybe she didn't want the cat running off.
They start having a conversation about deep subjects like religion, the time.
She's getting undressed. She says that unlike other kooks, she actually believes in God and wonders if Skip does too.
Just then, a neighbor shows up at the window to warn Lois that her friend, Tony, is on his way up and that it would probably be best if her friend got out of there.
Tony knows that her friend is visiting and he's not happy about it. Skip has already taken off his sweater at this point, so he struggles to get it back on. He wants to leave via the door, but Lois says, nope, you got to go down the fire escape. 6 floors.
As she's pushing him out the window and Tony is pounding on the door, she asks if Skip will buy her dinner on Monday. And he says, are you kidding?
Skip makes his escape down the fire escape. As he lands on the sidewalk, he realizes that he needs to settle down. The last week has convinced him that he needs to marry, and his wife doesn't have to end. And he once again mentions Joanna in the diary.
So Joanna's reading the diary still, and it says, and so I'm marrying Joanna. One day I'll tell you about her. She's really quite a lady.
She's beautiful. She comes from a good family. She has quite a lot of assets.
But in Joanna's eyes, this is too little too late. And unfortunately for Skip, this is the moment he comes home.
Oh no. He goes in for a kiss and he gets a slap instead. Joanna says she doesn't want to marry Skip just to relieve his frustrations and that they've only known each other for 2 weeks. Skip says he hasn't looked at another woman in all that time, but to her that means nothing.
She goes on to say that he's written page after page about all those other females, and Joanna was hardly mentioned at all in that diary.
And then she storms out, leaving a dejected Skip alone.
But it's not long before the doorbell rings. He answers the door, and it's Nancy Feather.
Not Joanna.
She immediately enters the apartment with luggage in hand, saying, hi, funny bunny, it's me.
She never stops talking. So we find out she's in New York City for a layover on her trip from Las Vegas to Paris. She immediately makes herself at home. She starts disrobing, getting ready to take a shower. She's talking nonstop, so Skip can't catch her or tell her to leave. And then she disappears to another room. I thought the bathroom, but I don't think so now.
The doorbell rings, and it's Joanna. She's come back.
Of course.
She's decided she wants to talk things through.
She understands that he had a wild past, but maybe they can get over that. And she thinks that with trust, except when she says the word trust, she also sees Nancy's belongings all over the floor of the apartment. So it comes out like, trust?
Where did you have her hiding? In the closet?
This is a fun scene, actually. At this point, Nancy comes out from the bathroom.
Wielding a knife and an apple.
And she's topless. Well, she's wearing just her slip and a skirt.
Oh, good. It's a party.
Joanna explodes in anger, saying that she's been gone for 2 minutes and he's already having an orgy.
So she slaps him and storms out once again.
Nancy tells him that the bachelor life is dangerous and he should get married. And she asks who that was.
And he tells her that until 5 minutes ago, she was his fiancée.
Nancy asks if he was in love with her, and Skip says he thinks so. Nancy hopes that she's not the reason that Joanna left, although she's part of it. Skip tells Nancy about the diary, and Nancy hopes that he wrote a chapter about her.
And she also says that if Skip really cares about Joanna, that he should go after her.
Yeah, his sordid memories shouldn't be the cause of this relationship's demise. So Skip does leave Nancy and run after Joanna. And we see Nancy sitting alone with a dejected look on her face and a carving knife in her hand.
And it's 1 year later.
Yeah, the caption tells us 1 year later, Skip is a married man.
He's married to Nancy Feather. And they appear to have an open marriage.
Yeah, who saw that coming? Only everybody. Skip comes in with a bag of groceries and asks Nancy if she's on the way to meet one of her kissing cousins. And she is. This one's Herman. Skip says, this is your 11th trip out of town, meaning her 11th affair. And Nancy says, no, it's the 12th. Nancy reminds him that when they got married, They said that they would both maintain their independence. As Nancy leaves, she tells Skip to call the hotel in Miami if he needs her and ask for Mrs. Arthur O'Hara. So Skip's real name is Arthur. And then she leaves him, quite literally, holding the bag. And that's the end.
You're listening to the American International Podcast, where we are discussing Diary of a Bachelor from 1964.
There's not a lot out there about this movie. I have a few factoids. It was shot in New York City. The street scenes include shots of Greenwich Village, Washington Square, and possibly the defunct Rockaways Park, the amusement park where Skip and Wanda took her little boy. The music in this film is by Jack Pleiss. And there was a soundtrack album made for the film. Don't know if you can find it anywhere. I just know that it exists. I saw pictures. On the album are tracks with the names The Diary Opens, The Making of Barbara, and Carlotta on Horseback, among many others.
William Traylor was a co-founder of the Loft Studio, an acting school attended by the likes of Angelica Houston, Sean Penn, and Nicolas Cage. He was a stage and screen actor who had a problematic and apparently sexual relationship with Noel Coward, which caused them both anguish and resulted in an apparent suicide attempt by Traylor, according to a biography about Coward by Philip Hoare.
Traylor's film work includes The Towering Inferno, The Long Riders, The Postman Always Rings Twice, and the 1985 film Fletch, where he played the uptight Mr. Underhill.
I remember Mr. Underhill of the Underhills. He was the guy at the country club who Fletch charged all of his expenses to.
That was kind of funny. Joe Silver was an American stage, television, film, and radio actor. His distinctive, deep voice was once described as the lowest voice in shoe business, so low that when he speaks, he unties your shoelaces. In 1947, he made the first of more than 1,000 appearances on television and went on to appear in films as diverse as Rabid and You Light Up My Life.
Director of Diary of a Bachelor, Sandy Howard, became a director on the Howdy Doody show at the age of 19. In the 1960s, Howard moved to Hollywood to pursue a career in film. Among his film productions were A Man Called Horse and Man in the Wilderness.
He did go through something pretty tragic. There was an explosion on the Greek set of his movie Skyriders in 1976. He was making that for 20th Century Fox. The explosion caused the death of a Greek electrician, and 11 other people were injured, and Howard was actually arrested for manslaughter and detained in Greece for several weeks. He had to give up on a project he was supposed to be working on due to this. He had to make a $250,000 out-of-court settlement, which one Variety article called a bribe, so that the crew member responsible for the explosion wouldn't be imprisoned by a military regime.
As we mentioned earlier, writer Ken Barnett was a pseudonym for Freddie Francis, who is better known for his directing work. He directed several films for Hammer Films, including Paranoiac, Nightmare, The Evil of Frankenstein, Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, and among his other directorial credits are Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, The Skull, The Deadly Bees, Trog, Tales from the Crypt, and The Doctor and the Devils.
Wow. This movie has a lot of release dates listed for it, which is because back then there wasn't a universal opening day for movies. The prints went from city to city, meaning that opening days could be staggered. According to Box Office Magazine, the official release was October of 1964, although it did premiere in other cities earlier.
Some of the taglines for Diary of a Bachelor included, "This picture is dedicated to life, love, and the pursuit of anything worth chasing.
The trade secrets of a career Casanova and his one mistake." What's his one mistake? Writing the diary or
Probably.
getting that girl pregnant?
Yes. With a single man, a girl can have hope. With a bachelor, she can have a ball.
He played the game of love like it was a Russian roulette, with pretty girls instead of live ammunition. Box Office Magazine, which was a publication primarily aimed at theater owners, recommended that the filmmakers play up the bevy of beauties in the cast, saying regular Broadway stage and nightclub devotees will be familiar with Joey Faye, Mickey Deems, Joe Silver, Arlene, Golonka, and Paula Stewart. But for the average moviegoers, stress the title and use photos or blow-ups of Miss Golonka, Dagne Crane, Denise Lohr, Chris Noel, and the other scantily clad girls in the cast to attract male patrons. Display scenes from the film in men's stores was their recommendation.
The only information we were able to find on the box office receipts for this film came from a French website that said between November 22nd to November 28th, the film grossed $14,500 on 2 screens, and between February 8th and August 14th, 1965, Diary of a Bachelor grossed $14,000 and was on 9 screens.
Since the movie was seen in different cities at different times, it's really hard to get a full picture of how much money this film made. Nobody tallied it up for us, so AIP may or may not have made back their investment.
Critical reception for Diary of a Bachelor was mixed. TV Guide panned the film and gave it 1 star, stating, "Told in a series of redundant flashbacks, the clumsy hand of producer-director Howard fails to keep interest for long. An unsympathetic character's life told in an uncaptivating style doesn't leave much room for praise." Variety also criticized the film as a tame tale with the byline, "Lack of names and generally pallid comedy makes it candidate for second billing."
Well, we don't know if it got first, second, or double billing at all. Box Office Magazine was a little kinder, saying it was a fun-filled farce comedy dealing with a young bachelor's amorous adventures, most of them of the bedroom variety. This modest budget film, produced and directed by Sandy Howard entirely in New York, is a departure from American International's family-type musicals and horror epics, but it can be exploited to good returns, especially in key city downtown houses. Written by Ken Barnett, the tale is merely a compilation of blackout vaudeville skits, many of them hilarious, tied together by newcomer William Traylor's engaging portrayal of an average guy bachelor. The background shots of familiar Manhattan locations will interest New Yorkers. The array of pulchritude rates extra selling.
There were only a few actors from Diary of a Bachelor who would appear in other AIP-related films. Actor Joe Silver would later appear in the AIP subsidiary Trans-American release They Came From Within, probably better known today as Shivers from director David Cronenberg in 1975.
And the credits listed some of the unnamed characters at the end as just bachelorettes. One of those was Nay Bonet, who appeared in Devil's Angels in 1967. This, however, is her first film. And we only see her at the very beginning doing exercises and looking at Skip's portrait.
Another bachelorette is Chris Noel, and she would later appear as the female lead Chris in 1967's The Glory Stompers. So now it's time for us to display our views of this film. Cheryl, using our AIP scale, where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic, how do you rate Diary of a Bachelor?
I'll get to that in a second. I just wanted to give my thoughts on the movie. This is a lighthearted take on an era dealt with more soberly on Mad Men. As movie goes, it's competently made, it's breezy enough to make for a mildly diverting time filler. The music is toe-tappingly good, and the costumes are just darling. I love the suits and gowns the women are in, Joanna's in particular. I'd kill to be able to wear that. The street scenes of New York City are engaging. It makes me want to visit the city during that era, even if the dating scene was apparently quite depressing. The more I watch it, though, the less I care about the title character, and the more I care about some of the background players. Mainly my sympathies lie with the much more interesting Charlie, who acts as both wingman and conscious to Randy Playboy Skip. Skip, by comparison, seems so callous and shallow. The movie paints Charlie as a guy who's accepted that he's just the opposite of Skip, and thus can only expect to be a lifetime of loneliness. But I think when you put Skip and Charlie side by side, it's Charlie who's far more attractive and even more interesting, has more of a inner life. The movie gives us one quick scene of Charlie apart from Skip, where he almost asks a woman out and then decides against it. And Joe Silver manages to wring more emotion out of those few seconds than we get in an entire 89 minutes of Skip's supposed pursuit of love. Similarly, most of the female characters that Skip chases after come off as forgettable and indistinguishable. They don't even all have names. But there are two main archetypes. There's the alluring, aloof beauties like Barbara and Joanne, and the slightly less beautiful, good time gals like Lois, Nancy, and Angie. It would be much better if a movie distinguished between characters and gave them a little bit more of a personality. Obviously, Skip's not really interested in personality, though, and the movie definitely underscores that. One problem I had with the movie was his encounter with pregnant Jennifer. She's already set to marry Harley, who apparently knows she's pregnant and it's not his. And then for some reason, neither of us understood. She and Harley go to visit Skip. They surprise him with the news, even as Skip is preparing to be the one who makes an honest woman of her. Yet Jennifer is seen willing Skip with her eyes not to disclose the true nature of their relationship to Harley, who's ready to fight to defend her honor. But after they leave Skip's place, Skip draws the conclusion that he wasn't the one that impregnated her. So who did? If not Skip, why were they there? If it was Skip, why were they there? I don't get it. Then more problematically, I wonder, does this movie even like women? There are not one, but two full-time prostitutes in the film. And the conversation that the men have during the poker game is nakedly anti-woman and anti-marriage, though Skip does weekly protest that he doesn't entirely agree with them. Skip and the women he dates do seem to be using each other in a rather mercenary fashion that leaves both genders looking bad, honestly. Then there's the ending. It really left me cold. Skip's exploits, as depicted in his diary, are supposed to show us a man who manages to outgrow his shallow life in pursuit of casual sex, although that only comes from his inability to get any, into someone who's ready to settle down with just one woman, whom he has always felt would leave him a bit bored and frustrated eventually. But when he does end up marrying, it's to Nancy, and that's with the understanding that he's to look the other way when she has her monthly, by my reckoning, affairs with other men. Sure, it's karma and probably just what he deserves, but it's a soulless life. They could just both swing, have a happy polyamorous marriage, be trendsetters. But that's not what happens. What happens is Skip is left alone and, frankly, emasculated. That said, it's unlikely his marriage to Joanne would have been successful even without the diary. We see that Skip proposed to her rather quickly, if they've only known each other for 2 weeks. We get no insight into the relationship, which is odd because for the movie to make sense, we should know why Skip loves her enough to cease his girl-chasing ways. In fact, we don't even know how they met, as the movie has no interest in telling us that. And that's a shame because Dagne Crane has some really funny reaction scenes after reading about Skip's more egregious exploits. And her interactions with Traylor show a potential for her to do a lot more if they had just given her more to do. The scene where she returns to give Skip another chance and finds Nancy in residence and partly undressed was actually pretty funny. I wish more of the movie had been about her. And honestly, the movie I wish that we had seen was Charlie's story. Or maybe we could have had a story that runs parallel with Skip's that shows him making more thoughtful romantic choices than Skip does. And maybe finding the happiness that has always eluded Skip. I think that might be a good contrast. Or maybe he could just meet up with the hooker with a heart of gold, Angie Pisano, and the two of them could have had a wacky romance. Admittedly, those are pretty cliche, trite stories, but I feel like it would have been a more feel-good movie if they had done that. But those are a lot of negatives, I know. I do feel that this movie was fun. It was, like I said, mildly diverting. I mean, it was produced well. Can't argue any flaws with the production. I'm going to give it an I. It's intermediate. Certainly could have been better. Could have cared about the people in it more. But it was pretty to look at and had some really funny moments. Jeff, what do you think?
Well, Cheryl, I thought Diary of a Bachelor was surprisingly fun. It's very farcical. It's also very theatrical. A lot of the acting is a little broad for film. There seems to be a little overacting here and there, and I don't know if it's good, but I enjoy it. It really does seem like this was intended for stage. It plays very much like a stage play. And that might just be a difference in New York acting at the time to California acting, where they weren't making as many films in New York. I think the movie is really well written. A lot of the dialogue is very smart. And the use of these New York actors with their stage leanings, I think it's still very effective because they fit right into place within this setting. And New York is actually a character in itself, not like it usually would be when it's this big bustling city, but we still see so much of it that you don't usually get to see in film or television because it's just a series of establishing shots. And in Diary of a Bachelor, New York is more like a background player. The character of Skip is admittedly a cad, and it's hard to find much likable about him. But what I did notice, for me anyway, is that with his constant voiceovers, it kind of had a Dobie Gillis feel to it. Now, where Dobie Gillis would be talking directly to the camera, breaking the fourth wall, and this was diary entries being read as a voiceover, it kind of had the same feel, and maybe it's because it's the subject matter of talking about your love life. But I kind of felt that Skip O'Hare was dark Dobie. This was a Dobie Gillis who, after years of rejection and dealing with his unrequited love, just went out there looking for the good times. But you could also make that argument for the character of Charlie Barrett, who probably had a very similar life to Dobie Gillis earlier in his student career. But that's neither here nor there. There's a lot of music in this movie. It's all background music, but I would almost say it's a character as well as the city of New York. A lot of it's jazzy sounding. There's one song that sounds almost like a instrumental surf tune. I think this is when they're going to the avant-garde gallery. So it's the music of the village. It's supposed to be like the village theme. And it really stands out. And I think this movie could almost be a musical. It almost feels like it's a musical just without the singing, in the way that the subject is treated and the fact that it feels very theatrical. And as you know, I love musicals, so I would have been on board for this. And with taking all this into account, I'm actually going to give this one an A. I thought this was a lot of fun. The movie moved. It was never boring. And while some characters are more likable than others, and they may not be the main characters, the ones that you mentioned, Charlie Barrett and Joanna, were pretty well defined, I think. And especially Joanna with having very little to do but to read a diary and look disgusted. But I really felt she stood out in her performance. And I enjoy the whole thing from beginning to end. I didn't want to watch it again because I didn't want to take notes on it. But I didn't mind seeing it again. So again, this one is an A for me.
Now I feel bad. Like maybe I should have given it an A too. I just can't get over the things that I mentioned. But I'll give it a plus. I'll give it an I plus. Just for you. Because you're not wrong. Everything that you said is true. It just maybe affected me a little differently. I don't know.
Well, it's probably a difference between the male and female perspective of watching this. Yeah.
That could be. No girl likes to date a cad. No guy likes to date a user. There's a little both in this movie. Or a lot of both in this movie.
So thus ends another episode of the American International Podcast. Until next time, I'm Jeff Markin.
And I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And we'll meet you at the drive-in. Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.